So likely next week, we're going to be talking through Minnesota's new marijuana law, its implications for townships, and what powers we're going to have with respect to this new set of statutory rules. But that said, that law clocks in at about 155 pages. So we're taking the time here to try to understand that, its implications. We're taking the time to try to talk to our colleagues. That is Mr. Gilchrist, folks at the League of Cities, just to make sure that we're getting this one right, because we do want to make sure that we're not making any mistakes on that. So in the meantime, I thought I might do a bit of an evergreen here, specifically talking about records retention for townships. I'm just going to talk through kind of a brief overview of the statutory architecture of records law, how it applies to townships, and that sort of thing. So we kind of begin with a big, obvious, practical question here, right? As part of our duties, we end up generating a fair amount of paper contracts, resolutions, minutes, bank statements, et cetera, et cetera. And many of our townships, of course, don't have great big office buildings full of file cabinets and safe places to store this stuff. So it eats up valuable space. It needs to be protected from extreme temperatures, from moistures, from fires, that kind of stuff. Even if you transfer it to digital, of course, it's not free. That requires maintenance. That requires somebody actually paying attention to this stuff. So under what circumstances can we just get rid of it? Well, strictly speaking, we can't, or at least not by our own authority. So let me start walking you through this process here. It starts with Minnesota Statute 138.225, or at least that's, in my view, the place that it starts. So hopefully you can read this one. We have a selection from the statute here. Government records shall not be destroyed except by the authority of the records disposition panel. In fact, it makes it a misdemeanor for somebody to intentionally remove, mutilate, destroy, conceal, alter, deface, or obliterate a record deposited in a public office. And in fact, this is one of those unfortunate times where being a public officer creates the possibility of being convicted of a crime. That is, it's impossible to commit a certain kind of crime unless you are a public officer. If you see at the bottom there, because it even makes it a misdemeanor for a public officer or an employee to, quote, knowingly permit, unquote, someone else to do that sort of thing. Now, of course, one of the things that you'll hear me say frequently if you have attended these things is wait a minute, does this really apply to us? Because there's, of course, a myriad of statutes that talk about government shall do this, government must do that, government cannot do this. But if you look into the definitions, government actually excludes us. Well, unfortunately, of course, you know the reason that I'm talking to you about this is that this is not one of those cases. Minnesota Statute 138.17, that is part of that same chapter, tells us that, quote, government records, unquote, means state and local records, including cards, correspondence, discs, map, memoranda, microfilms, papers, photographs, recordings, reports, tapes, writings, optical discs, other data, information, or documentary material, regardless of physical form or characteristics, made or received by an officer of a town pursuant to state law or in connection with the transaction of public business. So that gives us kind of this neat little three-part test. So we know specifically that townships are included by name in this law, but it also gives us this neat little three-part test to tell us what pieces of paper we need to care about. So if it is data, information, documentary material, regardless of its physical form or characteristics, if it is made or received by an officer of the town or employee of the town in connection with the transaction of business, public business, then this is something that is potentially a government record, something that potentially we need to pay attention to. Okay, but can we really never get rid of these things? Come on. As a purely practical matter, this is the kind of thing that we need to be able to dispose of. Some of us, some of our townships go back more than a century at this point. So there has to be a way to get rid of this useless paper. Well, there is. And this also comes from Minnesota Statute 138.17, specifically subdivision 7. Now you'll see a quotation up there on your screen, which hopefully you can read okay. When the schedule is unanimously approved by the records disposition panel, we can dispose of the records listed in the schedule at the time and in the manner prescribed in the schedule. Okay, well, who the heck is the records disposition panel? Well, from that same statute, Minnesota Statute 138.17, subdivision 1, in parens A, that gives us the list of who the record disposition panel is by law with respect to township records. So there's 3 people on it: the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota, state auditor when we're talking about local records, and then the director of the Minnesota Historical Society. So of course, this prompts a bit of a question, right? Do we literally have to negotiate with the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota in order to get rid of our old receipts? Well, you can if you want to. But this is a case in which the association has done a fair amount of legwork that your township can potentially benefit from. So on our website, under Information Library and then Records Retention, you will find a records retention schedule that has been approved by the Records Disposition Panel of the state of Minnesota, together with a resolution officially adopting that schedule. So the document numbers are RR 2000, that's the resolution, RR 1000, that's the records retention schedule. And then for folks who are a little bit less computer inclined, here's just a quick look at how you get there. So up on the top there, you'll see resources. You go to Information Library, and then once you're in Information Library, you'll scroll down a little bit and you'll see this records retention, and then you're looking for document RR 1000 and RR 2000. But of course, it wouldn't be the law if it were just that simple. So there are a few more details that are worth surfacing here. Minnesota Statute 138.17 subdivision 7 provides that it is our duty to establish and maintain an active and continuing program for the maintenance of records. It says we're supposed to create an inclusive inventory of the records in our possession. And then finally, it says a list of records disposed pursuant to this subdivision shall be maintained by the governmental unit. When records containing not public data are being disposed of and under this subdivision, the records must be destroyed in a way that prevents their contents from being determined. So to get rid of this old junk legally, in my view, there's basically 3 parts. So we've got to pass a resolution, got to adopt a schedule that has been approved by the Records Disposition Panel. We have to establish an inclusive inventory, and then we have to follow our schedule, and we have to keep a list of what it is exactly that we are disposing of. So, okay. Let me go ahead and end my screen share there. So hopefully that was reasonably visible to folks. So we've got a question here, exactly what is the punishment for a misdemeanor? So by Minnesota statute, that means up to 90 days incarceration, up to $1,000 fine, or both. Now, speaking as an ex-prosecutor and ex-criminal defense attorney, you are almost certainly never going to see anything like that, particularly for a first-time misdemeanor. I mean, of course, you have to get prosecuted in the first place. You have to not come to an agreement. You have to end up getting convicted of this thing. I'll tell you that I have seen cases in which people have been convicted of misdemeanors and ended up getting the full 90 days, but almost always that's somebody who is also being charged with, say, a felony, and they're just kind of throwing in the misdemeanor as a and we're also doing this on top of that. Nobody really cares about that. So legally speaking, 90 days incarceration, $1,000 fine, or both. Practical matter, you're very unlikely to see anything like that. So let's see. Hopefully we'll have an FMLA review. We have 1 part-time employee. We would be very happy to throw that one on the list there. So we did a bit of introduction to that one last week, but certainly as requirements go into effect, and most of those requirements are a little ways out yet. But as requirements go into effect, we've got them up on the calendar, and as Township Tuesdays come through, we're going to be reminding folks about, hey, look, state says you are supposed to put up notices in this particular time. So the state says you're supposed to, like, these particular requirements are coming into effect. So that's the plan, and I'd certainly be happy to go into more detail about the general requirements of the new Family and Medical Leave Act as well. So we will definitely be doing that. Where will taxes come from for the FMLA, clerk and treasurer checks or the township? Let's see. So I'm going to just quick check my notes here and see if I've got a clean answer to that one. Well, I tell you what, shoot me an email. I'll get you a statutory site on that. That is itself a relatively complicated statutory scheme, and I don't want to practice it from memory. So shoot me an email and I'll get you an answer to that one. All right. Does anybody else have any questions, any comments, concerns, etc.?
Group is quiet today.
All right.
Not necessarily a bad thing, if there aren't any issues, and so forth, that's absolutely fine. Oops, apologize for that. But if there are any questions, again, feel free to give us a call and or send us an email, and so we can talk about that and answer any direct questions you may have. Is there something that just came in? Did you already talk about the cannabis ruling?
So we are, we're putting together, or I guess I am putting together training on the new cannabis law. I'm expecting to have that one done by next Township Tuesday. In general, if you want the 10,000 foot picture, we have the authority to regulate time, place, and manner through the zoning process. We do not have the authority to prohibit cannabis businesses. So, where's the line there, particularly when we're looking at townships who, for example, don't have any commercial activity or have zoned out all commercial activity. And I know a number of members do that. We do not entirely know where the line is there. Is that them exercising their Chapter 471 powers legitimately because they're not singling out cannabis businesses specifically, or is that them prohibiting a cannabis business? So do you potentially have to allow that? I think that's an ambiguity that's in the statute right now. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to take my time with this one. The other thing to be aware of potentially is that there's a limit to depending on population, there's a limit to the number of licenses that are available in particular counties. And so it's entirely possible that that from a state regulatory perspective, the number of licenses that would be available for an individual township, for your individual township, may be 0. So it may be prohibited as a practical matter just anyway. But this is a fairly complicated law. Like I said, it's 155 pages. So I just want you to be aware that that's very back of the napkin stuff. That's very 10,000 foot picture stuff. So we're going to be going through it in quite a bit more detail 2 weeks from now. So yeah, incentive to come back and hear me talk some more, I guess.
We always like hearing your presentations, Graham. On the plus side,
can I just make a note that 2 weeks from now is July 4th, so we won't be having a township meeting.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you, Lori.
Okay, well, the Township Tuesday after that then.
Yep, exactly. On the plus side, the cannabis, you might see that your attendees to your town meetings may be a little more relaxed, might be a little more chill. On the bad side, you may have to start bringing some baked goods and maybe Doritos to the meetings, just to supply them with their munchies. So, but thank you all for coming. We appreciate that. Again, as always, please contact the association if you have any questions. And but we look forward to seeing you. Well, I guess it'll be in a month. And so have a happy and healthy and safe 4th of July holiday. And we'll see you all soon. Take care.
Have a good one, everyone.